Okay, I'm so excited to have on our show the founder of yoga medicine and internationally acclaimed due to her ability to fuse the two worlds of Eastern and Western medicine together and apply it to the practice of yoga in an accessible and relevant way. She also has a new podcast, Yoga Medicine, and she's my mentor and teacher of over 10 years. Please welcome Tiffany Cruickshank.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here. Nice to be on your podcast and see you.
In quotes. It's been a long time.
It feels like forever. It feels like it's been 10 years.
I know.
Yeah. When was the last time you guys actually saw each other?
So my last training with you, Tiffany, was November 2019.
Wow.
And
right
it was
before it all began.
Yes. And It's funny though, because I remember I was so tired. I was in this state of like, I think my nervous system was just overloaded. And it was ironic. It was the nervous system training. And I spent 7 days literally just napping. I couldn't stay awake.
It was good timing.
I know. I couldn't stay awake in practices. I was napping on our breaks. Like it was just, I mean, I got so much out of the training, obviously, but it's funny, like my journey with you. I think I told you one time that you should be like, have like recordings of you talking to talk people to sleep. Cause
That's true. She does have a very like soothing voice. Yeah.
Very soothing. Yeah.
Why, thank you.
You could have your own version of
my family might have a different opinion. They just see me like running around the house being goofy. And like, I think there's been a lot of dance parties during COVID, you know, just spontaneously turning on music because we're all at our computers sitting all day for so long. I think we've gotten weirder through COVID in my family.
Well, Tiffany, take us back a little bit to like, if you want to just give us a brief kind of how you got into yoga, what makes you today, and how you founded Yoga Medicine.
Yeah, the quick one. Well, it's interesting now too, because we have two kids. Well, now they're almost out of their teens. We have an 18 and a 20-year-old. I inherited them. They're my stepkids. They're my husband's kids. But it's so interesting watching it because I found yoga when I was struggling so much in my teens. I was 14 and I struggled so much with hormones and, you know, being teased and all of the things and, trying to find meaning in the world and trying to just be comfortable in my own skin. And for me, I was a troublemaker. I tested all the boundaries and my parents sent me out on a wilderness program and it changed my life. And it was cool because I learned how to survive. The joke in the family is always now like when you watch the apocalypse movies, like I'm the one they want to be with because I know how to like make fire and do all the primitive stuff. But it was empowering, but there was also a man on the wilderness program with me that was an herbalist and he'd take me out on plant walks. And I think he was just so excited to have someone interested because none of the other teenagers were interested in what he had to say. And so he'd take me out on these walks and teach me all about the plants. And it really began my intrigue with holistic medicine, which to me, yoga is a very important part of. And so I came home and I ended up just seeing this little sign. There was no internet at the time. And there was just this little sign that said yoga and a phone number. And we used to drive by it. It was close to my house. So we'd always drive by it. And finally I remembered it. And my mom would take me. It was in a chiropractor's office. So maybe there were 5 or 6 people. I think at the time, everyone seemed like old in quotes, probably in their 60s. And I just remember the way that I felt, and after going to his class for a while, he invited me to his house. I didn't know it at the time, but that was when I started doing Ashtanga in this little room that fit 3 people. And growing up being really athletic and physical, there was something to it that really drew me in about the physicality. But as we all know, if you practice yoga long enough, there are these incredible layers that keep you coming back that have intrigued me over the decades. And that was it. That was the beginning for me. I didn't really stop from there. I went kind kind of got really excited about it and quickly finished my undergrad, went off to college at 16, studied medicinal plant biology and nutrition, and did my pre-med, and then went off to, I found an acupuncturist and fell in love with Chinese medicine and the art of Chinese medicine. So then I went off to Chinese medicine school, did my grad school there, and all the while taught yoga. It was kind of like my side gig. And yeah, I don't know how much you want from there.
That's the beginning. Keep going. This is great.
Well, so actually, if and you're just starting to introduce it, but what I think is so cool about your approach is it's really about the union between Western medical approaches and more sort of alternative or Eastern or traditional kind of these like cultural practices and stuff like that. And I feel like most people today are like hardcore, like one or the other. And so I'm curious if you can like talk a little bit more about like how those two things can kind of work together, and like what are some of like how you help people understand that they can be complementary.
Yeah. And I think that really comes from my upbringing. My parents are very strong Christians and very conservative. And I know when I first started, I was such a troublemaker. They were just happy I was directing my energy into something that seemed more positive than the other things I was doing. And, but they were always so afraid that I was in a cult, that I was going to be like doing some weird things. And, so for me, this blending of bringing in the science and making it relatable, I think always spoke to my heritage a little bit and my upbringing, and how that kind of shaped my relationship with it. I was always trying to convince them, of the benefits of it. And, it's not a cult, it's not a religion, it's, this amazing thing. And so I think that just reflected in how I taught, when I graduated and started seeing patients. It was the same with Chinese medicine. For me, it's such a powerful modality. If you experience either one of these, yoga or acupuncture, pretty quickly the potency of them. And for me, as a Chinese medicine practitioner, I think one of the things that made my practice really successful was being able to speak in a way that was meaningful to my patients. And not everyone wants to know about all the details of Chinese medicine and what can sound kind of woo-woo, but there is a way to really make it relatable. And for me, my Western mind, I've always loved science and understanding things, this curiosity. So for me, it just made sense to kind of relate it in a way that was meaningful to them. And it was actually the reason. So I had my own practice in Portland. I sold it and then moved and was working with a really famous doctor in New York for a while, seeing a lot of celebrities and pro athletes, which was really fun working with him. But then I got a gig with Nike, and that was actually why Nike hired me to come back to their world headquarters, was because I'm assuming this was her interpretation in the interview, it was really about how I had woven the two together and kind of brought it down to earth. I became friends with the woman that hired me later, and she told me that, of course, but, of course, I think that really helped at Nike. I think that helps, for yoga, for the whole thing. And I think from a healing standpoint, it also creates this positive visualization. If I have a way to connect to it, it doesn't matter what words I use. If I can create this visualization, this kind of healing map to take me back to that might involve science or anatomy, that might involve an understanding of yoga philosophy or Chinese medicine principles. But I actually think that a lot of people now really, maybe it's just the world I live in, but love that combination. I feel like, for the first decade or so of my journey teaching yoga, I felt a lot more of that, like the rift between, the people that really wanted the nuanced subtleties and philosophy and the people who really wanted the Western science. And I feel so impressed, I think, by how far our society's come as far as embracing yoga and acupuncture. And I do think there's so many more people, again, it might be my perspective, but that really embrace both, which is cool to me, I think.
Yeah. Well, I also grew up very conservative Christian, and then found yoga while I was married at the time. And it was kind of like I had to explain to my parents that doing a yoga training was not like of the devil. Like they were concerned.
See, we get each other. That's why we were drawn to each other.
Exactly. And you was something that drew me to your program was that it seemed anatomical based, you know, and that I didn't want the woo woo. I didn't want the spiritual side and the philosophical. Blah, blah, blah. I have like COVID brain right now, but the philosophical side. And I loved it. I mean, I eat up anatomy and yoga. And then, you know, with my trainings with you throughout the years, Chinese medicine was actually my favorite training that I did. And so it's just been so fun to see you bring this into the yoga world and it becomes such a like worldwide like thing. Can you talk a little bit about like why you, because I know you started doing I think I was one of the first trainings that you did for 200 hour, not the first, but I think I was in the first couple of years of you doing that. I'm not, maybe I'm wrong, but then how did you get into
long way
like
back for me?
Yeah. What was your progression into creating yoga medicine and how has that been for you since then?
Yeah. And first off, I just want to say, I know you said you love the TCM and for me, TCM fills in the gaps that Western medicine doesn't understand. Like for instance, I love our women's health module because it talks so much we don't understand about things like infertility and PCOS and endometriosis and things that TCM just brilliantly makes sense of all of those nuances. So yeah, I love bringing the TCM in and I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Well, for me, let's see, where did it begin? I mean, I started running trainings out of my house in 2003, and that was just me, maybe 2002, 2003. That was just me going to trainings, loving them. And there weren't many trainings at the time. And then coming home and just teaching little workshops to like my fellow teachers, people who were interested. And I just loved it so much that it expanded over time. And I think it was 2008, we did our first 200-hour training. And then 2009, I did the first 500-hour training. And it's just kind of gone from there. And, you know, at the time it was just, I didn't really have a name for it. It was just me. So I called it Tiffany Yoga. At the same time, you know, when I got out of school, I was seeing a lot of patients who were yoga teachers or yoga students or teachers. And I just noticed how quickly they got better in comparison to my patients who didn't do yoga. They responded so quickly. And so I started giving what I called yoga prescriptions to my patients who didn't do yoga, which was, you know, just one or two little simple things that they do. And I found that it really enhanced the outcomes because it gave people things to do. I never wanted people to be dependent on me. I hated that sense of like, you've got to come back every week or you've got to do this, you know, and become dependent on coming to me. I've always really wanted people to find their own way and give people tools to really unlock their own potential and health. Because I think that's really where the stuff comes, is the things that you do more regularly rather than the like once a week you come and see me, if that. So anyways, I started using those yoga prescriptions. And at the time I was running these teacher trainings and it was very anatomically based and more traditional. I was still teaching Ashtanga a bit at the time. So it was kind of more traditionally based in that lens. And I actually hurt my back. Really, I herniated a disc and had a pretty extreme injury, which kind of pushed me to be like, hey, Tiffany, you're using all this, my specialty was sports medicine. And you're doing all this great work with your patients. Like you need to bring this into your yoga classes. I was teaching Vinyasa and Ashtanga, but I wasn't really integrating it. And so I started really leaning into the therapeutics. It was a good kick for me to start to focus on that and draw in all of what I loved about anatomy and biomechanics and movement and optimizing health and working with athletes. And so that was kind of how it evolved into yoga medicine eventually, and really became focused on therapeutics, which to me, I think a lot of people have misconceptions about therapeutics in yoga, like that it's, you know, we're laying around on pillows and relaxing. But to me, therapeutics is simply what meets the individual needs. So that could be something vigorous, that could be something sweaty, it could be restorative, it could be meditation, pranayama. But really it's about individualizing it. And so I've just found over the years that I love teaching it. I love integrating what I do in TCM with what I love in anatomy, with what I love in yoga. There's such a beautiful blending when they all come together and meet in the middle that I really love teaching too.
That's so awesome. So TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, right? That's what
Oh,
that
yeah,
acronym
sorry.
means. Yeah. No, that's okay. Just for the audience. So I'm curious, like, for you and your work and even clients and students that you work with, can you talk about like how that relationship between like the physical health and the mental health, because we talk a lot about kind of like holistic wellness and particularly like mental and emotional health on our show. And it sounds like that's one of the major benefits in this complementary approach. But
I think so. I don't think you can influence one without influencing the other. I think it really is all linked together. And so it's one of the reasons I really love teaching anatomy, because everyone can relate to that. Some people are open to the subtleties or the philosophy or other parts of the nuances of yoga or maybe the mental side of it, but the anatomy feels like a touchstone that everyone can relate to. And then you get all those spillover effects of just the simple things that we do in yoga. Just the concept of being able to focus our attention on the breath for a few moments is such an important thing. The positivity I think that it brings, the ability to lean into our ability to notice and be curious to things without having to have an outcome or an expectation or an agenda, I think is such a big part of that. And I think for me, the coolest things that I notice, obviously there's kind of a whole mental health realm that we could talk about, but are the little things like the changes in people's outlook on life that I see. I mean, it's beautiful to watch. I love that I can run these trainings and watch teachers in particular trajectory over often many years and watch how they change so much and their own work, of course, to just seeing things differently, to being a more proactive member in their life. I was having this little conversation with our son the other day. We had this little talk about how important it is to have ownership and to not blame other people for things. Because as soon as I blame someone, I take my power away. And I think yoga allows us to keep reflecting and seeing what it is that we're doing, how I can get better, how I can improve, whether it's, in quotes, my fault or not. My son got in a car accident where he was in the roundabout and someone hit him. So it clearly wasn't his fault, but he learned a lot about what he has to do for insurance next time, that he should probably call the cops, even if everyone's okay, because they, establish who's in the right or wrong for the insurance, all the little things. And it was, just this moment of like, okay, well, there's still things I can learn in any situation by just paying attention and listening and noticing and kind of stripping away the judgment of it. I think yoga really helps us. It's kind of like cleaning the lens of your sunglasses just to be able to see more clearly, so that maybe I can make better decisions. Maybe I still make some of the same decisions, and that's okay. I get to start watching the patterns and the habitual responses, and I get to be that proactive part of deciding, which way I want to steer things. And I think that's a really important part of, obviously there's a lot of things I think that yoga does for mental health, but I think that's one of them. We judge everything. We're constantly filtering and scrutinizing and judging and maybe blaming, or, being able to find a way to keep growing and embracing. I think the curiosity is such a big part of it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Leanna.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, it sounds like a lot of that is mindfulness, of just being like very aware of your own feelings, your own emotions, your like impact on the world and the world's impact on you. I'm wondering, can you kind of talk a little bit about mindfulness in just like an everyday way of maybe, listeners that we have that aren't really interested in doing yoga or the physical side of it, how can they apply certain aspects of it to their lives?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think what's most interesting about mindfulness that people kind of forget is that it really is just being aware. I think for some of us, I know for myself, my human nature is as I become aware of something, I want to scrutinize it. I want to pick it apart. I want to dissect it. I want to understand it. I want to know where it came from and where it's going and all of the things. And I think what's really freeing and empowering about mindfulness is that we kind of strip all of that away and allow ourselves just to be in it. And I think, in yoga, it's this idea of kind of clearing away those filters so that we can see clearly, because so many times we get caught up in the story and we get caught up in the agenda. And for me, curiosity is a word that I love these days because it kind of dismantles all of that, kind of strips it all down to just be present. And, as I'm curious, I have like a young child's mind to be able to feel things as if they were the first time, so that there isn't this story behind it and this agenda. So I think, to me, that's one of the key components. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
yeah, no, I mean, I think because I think whether you're doing yoga or not, I think a lot of just being aware in your relationships with anybody and yourself, that you have to take small steps every day to like stop for a moment, or like take a couple deep breaths, or something. That one of the things that you say a lot when I'm taking classes with you or trainings is you say, what does it feel like to be in your body? Like, just notice, like, what does it feel like? And I think just even small things like that, if someone's in the kitchen and they're stressed, or, excuse me, or they go on a date and it goes horribly, or they're mad at their partner or whatever, to just like stop and be like, okay, what am I feeling in my body? And I think if we all just were a little bit more mindful and aware, then like that would help so many things before reacting, or before doing something that we might regret or that we don't want to do. I guess that's kind of what I was thinking.
I think what most people don't realize is that the noticing is the recalibration. Like in a yoga practice, and this can apply to your day with those check-ins you're talking about, those mindful moments of just noticing your breath for a moment. I think it's easy to kind of brush over those as something that's kind of very simple. Like you're in a yoga practice and like you said, I might ask people to pause and just notice. And I think what most people don't realize is that is where my system now starts to respond, and my nervous system starts to kind of take in those changes and recalibrate. That gives me that moment of space for the recalibration. And I think, it seems so simple, but it's such a big thing. And in relationships, I mean, for me, it was everything. I know when I was, we've all struggled in relationships and had our struggles. And for me, the thing that's been most helpful has been being able to own my own issues. Like you get in a fight, and we all have the tendency, right, to kind of flare up. I'm just as fiery as anyone else. And
What?
there's that moment of noticing and like, and you can, it's almost like a little creature or something. You can kind of see its shape kind of rearing up a little bit and noticing it. And now I can kind of start to look like, whoa, what's actually triggering me here right now? Am I just needing more attention from my partner? Are our ideas of what we want not lining up? Are, like, what's actually happening, so that I can have the real conversation instead of just getting angry and then storming off and us both being unhappy. I think as I've gotten older too, I've noticed that, being happy in a lot of ways, and not to overly simplify it, I know there's a lot more to it, but it's choice. And, when I'm fighting with my partner, I'm kind of choosing to have a shitty day. Can I say that on here?
Oh yeah. You can say anything you want.
I'm choosing to have a shitty day. And, when I was younger, I had a lot more fire and I would just steam and stew in it. And, at some point you have to realize, okay, I don't want to have a shitty day. You don't want to have a shitty day. So what's really going on here? Can I clear that lens, pull my emotions away, because the emotions kind of deactivate the prefrontal cortex and my ability, and I get really overly emotional. I can't really think straight. Can I calm that down? Can I take a few breaths so that now I can actually use the intelligent part of my brain and to actually be able to have a conversation? And I think our daughter's 20 and, she's in her first relationship. So it's fun watching it and also challenging. But what I think is so interesting about relationships is we always have this feeling that it's personal, and it's not personal, especially when you're single and you're dating. Like, it's just a fit or it's not a fit. It's not about whether you're good enough for that person or they're good enough for you. It's not personal at all. It's just about, is there a connection? Do we see the same? Do we have chemistry? And then if we do, and we've committed to each other, and I've been married before my husband as well. So I've been in situations where, my first husband wasn't a very good communicator. And that was kind of a deal breaker for me, because I have to be able to talk through something. I have so much respect for him still. And, but for me, it just unfortunately wasn't the person that I could see myself living the rest of my life with, because I have to be able to have those conversations. And so, it's not personal. It's finding the person that you can have the hard conversations with, that you can have, that will also have that courage to kind of calm down enough to see clearly, to be unemotional. Maybe that means waiting, but for me, the yoga has helped me a lot in relationships. I can't imagine what a train wreck I'd be in relationships if I hadn't had some yoga in my life.
Yeah.
So,
I love that so much, because I think that really, we talk a lot about like making excuses for, people that aren't reciprocating, or like just like being bummed. Like, the whole idea of the podcast is like, you say hello to someone one moment, and like a week later or 3 months later or 7 years later, maybe you have to say goodbye, and it hurts and it sucks. But I like that I like the idea that it's not personal. It's just, does it work or does it not work? And then you get to use each situation and learn with it and move forward, and hopefully become a better version of yourself, so that when you do meet the right person, then you can communicate effectively.
Yeah. And I mean, I think back with Forrest, my husband now, like, I think both of our previous partners prepared us to be the person we are with each other. Thank goodness. I'm always like, she really broke you in for me, and like, I learned, that you learn what you need. And for me, Forrest and I met online dating. We met on OkCupid, and I love the idea of online dating. I just think what ends up happening for so many people is we go into this place of needing to please and needing to be wanted by other people, that it actually puts up a facade that we don't actually get to quickly weed through and actually find the person. Because I really believe there's probably several but there's someone for everyone out there, if we can just really be ourselves. And that was what was so opening for me on OkCupid, was that I could just be super honest about who I am, what I want, what I don't want, and, just put it out there. And, I met my husband. I had just I had moved to Sydney. I was engaged and had this horrible, really awful, well, not awful because of him, but just a really sensitive breakup. And my husband had come out of his marriage and had a really tough divorce, long in the coming. And, when we met, we were both so raw that we didn't have any guards up. We both were like, this is just me, take it or leave it. I don't know what's going to come of this. I'm not looking for anything serious. I'm not looking just for a fling, but let's just see what happens. And I think both of us were so raw that we just had no guards up. And I think when you have that guard up, you're trying to please everyone. And so you end up at all these pit stops along the way before you finally get to that person. And yeah, I wish I wish everyone felt that. Feel like I tell my single friends, it's like, there is someone out there for you. It's just a matter of finding them and being really brutally honest. You know, if they're not giving you the attention you need early on, like move on. You know, it's not personal to them either. Like it's just not right. My friend was on one of the online dating apps recently, and she had like this really great connection with this guy, and he was cute. She showed me his picture, and like he checked all the boxes, and they, you know, had a nice date. And then the next day he texted her and he said, you know, I just don't think it's going to work out or something like that. And she was like so taken back and kind of offended, which I would have, I mean, I think everyone feels hurt and sensitive. And I was like, honestly, I think I would be so grateful. Like, thank God he didn't string you on.
Yeah.
And, you know, you find out a year later, like my fiance in Sydney, we could have dated for 5 years before I found out he wasn't right. So, you know, I moved to Sydney. I found out really quickly, and it was hard and hurt like hell, but I was really glad to like be able to move on and find someone who maybe was the right person. So
I love all of this so much. Sorry, Jared. I know you.
No, I was like, I really hope Leanna is paying close attention here.
Hey, you're single too.
Well, no, and what like the thread that I think runs through so much of what you've been saying, Tiffany, is this idea of like acceptance, right? And like what you just said about that courage to just fully put it all out there, like is really a deep level of self-acceptance of like, yeah, I don't have to try to be like cool or what I think other people will find sexy or whatever. I'm just going to be myself. And I even thought about that in what you were saying about happiness being a choice, right? In every moment, we have the opportunity to accept what is, or to sort of stay in the like, oh, but I wish it was like this, or what, you know, like that's the sort of Buddhist definition of suffering, is the wish that things were other than what they are, right? And I think that's I don't know, I think that's so difficult. You know, there's like a million endless layers to that, to accepting yourself and being able to accept things in the moment, but so important.
I think it's so cool because like everyone has their own form of weird. We're all weird in our own way. And I don't know about you, but I want to find someone who likes my weird, not someone I have to hide my weird from. I know I spent a lot of years trying to like hide my weird and be like this normal person. And, you know, when I met Forrest, it was just like, again, all my guards were down, and I'm like, wow, actually finding someone out there will love your form of weird or who you are as you are. There is someone, and probably many people out there, who will love your form of weird if I can just be okay with that and wait for that person, and not take it personally that not everyone's going to want that. And that's okay. Like they have a different form of weird because we all got it.
Yeah. Well, my form of weird is over communication.
And you'll find someone who loves that. Trust me. Forrest is such a great listener. He knows I love to talk. And like at the end of my days, I love to like, minus after a training, I'll probably be quiet for days after a training.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I love talking, and he loves listening. And, you know, it's a really nice combination because, you know, that's kind of, we both have our own way of doing it. And of course I listen to him, but he's not as much of a talker. I always have to kind of like pull it out of him. But, you know, you just find the combination that works for you. And, you know, yeah, I don't know. That was my story, at least.
I love it. Jared, what's your form of weird?
Oh, I don't know. I have like a million.
Jared is he's turned into a very odd person.
Well, okay. So speaking of my form of weird, I'm like, part of me wants to, because Tiffany, I've gotten really into like breathwork stuff lately. I read that book Breath by James Nestor. I don't know if you've heard of it or read it.
It's so good.
It's so good, right? And I've also been reading more about like sort of tapping stuff, which I think is like about meridians, right? Which is sort of TCM based.
Tapping. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about like either like pranayama stuff or breath stuff or tapping or anything like that?
Any of that. Just talk about it. I have been really I love the tapping lately. For me, it's just another way of doing acupressure, but it feels a little bit more tangible to a lot of people because it kind of feels like it sparks things a little bit more than just pushing on the points. Now, obviously, some points, are harder to tap than others. Some just feel better to kind of rub or massage. But I mean, I love acupuncture and acupressure. So for me, the tapping is just a great extension of that as a way to kind of tune into not only those acupuncture points, but also this vibrational layer, which is very real. It's not esoteric and strange and out there, but it's actually a real part of our bodies, this vibration body. Yeah, I don't know. What did
So
you
what
want?
would you like, what would you say to somebody? Like, when would you say like, hey, this might be something really good for you? And like, how would you kind of explain it to someone who's sort of like new to the whole concept?
Well, it just really depends on what's going on. I'm using them just as I would acupuncture points. And so, there's like 400 or so points. It kind of depends on what's going on. And so it's usually very individualized. And I'll usually kind of state, because most people are familiar with acupressure. I like that term because it's not, thank God, acupuncture is not so weird. I thought, when I first started, I would probably spend my whole career being this black sheep, strange outsider. And now, it's really nice to have yoga and acupuncture so embraced. But with I'll usually call it acupressure and kind of let them decide whether they like to press or tap. Everyone has different preferences. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
well, no. So, I mean, like what I'm aware of is like, I know a lot of people like use it as a kind of de-escalation technique. Like if they get really anxious or really overstressed or over emotional and stuff like that. And there's a way that you're sort of tapping on these different points on your body. And I think
I'm not trained in that. Yeah. I think it's called EFT, emotional freedom technique. Right. Is that what you're talking about? And they have a very specific order that it goes in. And as far as I know, I all of the ones that I know of that they're tapping on are acupuncture points. They're usually very calming points, very nourishing points. One of my favorites here, just right on the center of the sternum. There's a great one right if you think about going just below your clavicles, just to the outer edges of your sternum. It's kidney 27. It's the last point on the kidney meridian. But in Chinese medicine, we use this as like an emotional reset button. So I think of it like clearing the slate. And for me, that's a really important one for de-escalating. And then they've got some calming points on the wrist, I think. But again, I'm not trained in the EFT technique, so I'm not using it in that specific way.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think that's just an example of what both you and Leanna were talking about in terms of like getting back into the body and the sort of mindfulness aspect and the idea that, I think of it like your conscious thinking mind sort of stepping off of the treadmill. It's like going. And then, just the idea of like tuning into sensation in some way. And I think for a lot of us, having some kind of like for a lot of people, like meditation is hard of just, sit there and tune into the sensation of your breath for 10 minutes is really difficult. So having something a little more visceral, like a tapping, like a specific breath work, or even like a yoga asana, like a yoga pose or something like that, really helps people
I
get
love
there.
the breath work too. I mean, the breath work is such a great way because basically we're interjecting in the nervous system, because the breath is the only part of the nervous system that can be both automatic as well as controlled. So we get this gateway into the what's called the autonomic nervous system. And I mean, I think everyone, the breath is so popular now, has probably experienced how quickly you can calm down and I think there's a lot of different breathing techniques that do that. In yoga, we look at a lot of specificity between the different pranayama techniques. However, when I'm working one-on-one with patients or clients, it's really just about finding that thing. Like everyone has their switch that they have to flip, whether that's for some people that the tapping is like the thing, or the acupressure. For others, it's just taking a slow exhalation. For others, it's a 4-count inhale, a 7-count pause, an 8-count exhale, or 4-count inhale, 8-count exhale. I mean, there's so many different variations on those things. And for others, it's just noticing their breath. And I think the trick as a human for me is teaching people the owner's manual to their body. So helping them find that thing that really unlocks the puzzle for them so that, when they're in that stress state and the amygdala is going crazy, that emotional part of the brain is going crazy, I can start to shift to the nervous system really quickly. And now I'm able to engage with my prefrontal cortex, the rational part of my mind that can really see things more clearly and make, calm, clear decisions. And, all of those can be really great ways to quickly shift, but it does require, that I have some practice with it.
Mm-hmm.
To some extent. I mean, I think anyone can do a little breath work and probably shift things a bit, but as I become more familiar with it, I think it becomes a more potent tool for people.
Mm. Is there
Love
like
that.
one technique out there that you would recommend to
Oh.
to our listeners, or or I almost want to ask you if you want to like lead us through something right now, but we totally don't have to do that.
Well, the tapping on kidney 27 is one of my favorites. If people like tapping, that's a great one. So again, it's just below the collarbones, clavicles, and just outside of the sternum. And usually you'll do that for a minute or two. So it's just outside of your sternum. So it's almost on the edges of your sternum, right below your collarbones. Another one is right in between the eyebrows. This is a point called yin tong that's really calming. It's the point, if we have someone who's nervous as an acupuncturist, we put that one in first. Calm them down. It's known by every acupuncturist in the world because it's a very strong calming point. In yoga, you can set your forehead on the edge of a block, maybe in child's pose or something like that, as a way to stimulate it. Even just bringing some awareness to those points can be a way to stimulate it. If you're in a meeting and you can't tap or do something like that, it can be a nice way to kind of tap into those energetic points. As far as breathing goes, it really depends because everyone's so different. I mean, I worked with a very high caliber athlete who was a professional football player who also had asthma, who could hardly do a 3-count inhale, 3-count exhale, and so it kind of depends on the person. And, that did change over time as we were working together slowly. It took quite a bit of work. So it really does depend on the individual, but for some people who like counting, like some people really like the structure of counting. I would say just a tried and true favorite is 4 counts in, 6 counts out, because we're lengthening the exhale to stimulate that parasympathetic response associated with the exhale. And for other people, the counting can kind of feel like a constraint. And so for some people, I recommend just taking an inhale and then just slowing down their exhale as long as they want without counting. And I know for me, sometimes I like one of those more than the other, just depending on the day. You don't need to overthink it. But I would try some of those out. And as you get more comfortable with it, you might even grow to increase some of those numbers. So, maybe it's 4 counts in, 8 counts out, or 6 counts in, 12 counts out. But the key with it is that more is not necessarily better. I know for me, when I started practicing, all these lofty goals of, enlightenment and all of this stuff and being able to, expand the breath, and I was forcing it and like straining. And really, I think the potency of these practices comes in our ability to relax. So don't force yourself to go higher, but as you're just wanting to increase those numbers, you can. I really like simple.
Yeah, no,
Sorry.
I agree. And I think what you were just saying is like something that I almost shared earlier. That's like, I feel like has really helped me, that I gained from yoga, is this idea of like sort of being effortful, but also like not being so concerned with the results. Right. Like, and I learned that in yoga, and then was able to apply it to like my other workouts. Like it used to be like, oh, I have to like go faster than I did last workout, or I have to add reps, or what, like this idea of like, I have to get far, if you do that in yoga, you're probably going to hurt yourself, number one, and you're going to make your practice miserable, and you're not going to get back on your mat and do it again. But I think, I think what you just shared about the breathing technique is the same thing. Is not like, oh, I have to, develop a longer breath hold or a slower exhale, or, lengthen my counts or whatever. It's like, no, just be with where you are. And sometimes my body can do more stuff than it did last week. And then sometimes it doesn't. And either way, that's okay. Right.
Yeah. And I don't think there's judgment on it either. Like, I know for me, when I first started practicing, that was really interesting to me in my teens and my 20s. I think it was more about a discipline, which I needed at the time. And I pushed myself. And when I hurt my back, I had just finished 4th series of Ashtanga, which is kind of ridiculous if you look at the poses that they do.
It's insane.
And it was so my type A tendency to like, I needed that next pose. And I'm sure there are people who can do it and be healthy and feel great. But for me, it was not the right recipe. However, I mean, like, as you know, from our talk, like it was a huge part of my story going through that and what shifted. So I think there's a place for everything. And I love that yoga is so much about not judging that. Like there's a place for the householder and a place for the monk and a place for, all these different paths. And it's not that one is right or wrong. Again, it comes back to this idea of like, it's really about us learning and growing along the way and opening our eyes so that we can see. So we're not just walking through our lives blindfolded or with our hands tied behind our back. Our ability to now go and cultivate and create a beautiful relationship or a beautiful business or a wonderful podcast to inspire people. I think all of it is really important.
So well said.
I know. Should we just turn
I know,
off the mic
call
right
it.
now?
Yeah,
Let's
no
just do
more.
it right there. Yeah.
Tiffany, thank you so much for coming on. It's like, I'm so glad that I'm seeing you because it's been so long since we've connected. But also just for you to offer our listeners your wisdom and knowledge. We're so appreciative.
Well, I'm just in it with you. I'm still learning too. So I'm sure I'll be able to tune in and learn some things of my own. I've just, I'm happy to be here and share. And it's wonderful to see you. You look great, even though I know you have COVID right now. You look amazing. And it's nice to meet you as well. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, and so Tiffany, if our listeners like love everything you said and they're like, where do I go for more?
Super easy. yogamedicine.com. We've got everything on there. We've got a link to courses, to classes, to books, to what else? Our nonprofit, our podcast, everything's social media. It's all on there. yogamedicine.com.
Yeah. And just to clarify, you can take classes with your online yoga that aren't for teachers. You don't have to be a teacher to take your classes. You could start as a beginner. It's like for everybody.
Yeah, it's really cool because we have these little, what we call monthly doses. So, when I was teaching more locally, I found that the people who studied with me over time learned so much and had such a great tool bag of things they could use. And so we have these little monthly doses that are just short little lectures to help people get the most out of their practice. And, our platform's really just for people who want to feel great, whether that's, moving and hopping and sweating or restorative and planting little nuggets of information so they can understand a little bit more about the what, why, and how along the way.
Yay. And is it at Yoga Medicine on IG?
Yeah. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, they're all yoga. I mean, I think there's a space between it on some of them, the underscore.
Oh, okay.
Yoga underscore medicine. But if you type in Yoga Medicine,
you'll find it.
The authorized one. Or whatever.
Hey,
yeah.
Tiffany, well, thank you so much. We so appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, don't go anywhere.